The Shadow of the Pines. Section 1, The Whispering Wilderness. Chapter 1, The Trail Begins. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth as you and your friends set out on the trail. The Blue Ridge Mountains loomed ahead, their peaks shrouded in a morning mist that clung to the valleys like a ghostly veil. Your group, 4 of you in total, had planned this hike for weeks, eager to escape the grind of city life. The trail was a moderate one, winding through dense forests and up rocky inclines, promising breathtaking views at the summit. Backpacks slung over your shoulders, you laughed and chatted, the crunch of gravel under your boots a steady rhythm. But something felt off from the start. Maybe it was the way the birds stopped singing when you entered the deeper parts of the forest, or the sudden chill that seemed to settle in your bones despite the warm September sun. You brushed it off, chalking it up to the altitude or your imagination. Still, you couldn't shake the feeling that the forest was watching you, its ancient trees standing like silent sentinels. As the trail curved around a moss-covered boulder, your friend Sarah paused, pointing to a strange marking etched into the stone. It looked like a crude spiral, weathered but deliberate, as if carved by someone long ago. Weird, she muttered, snapping a photo with her phone. You nodded, but your eyes lingered on the symbol. It seemed to pulse faintly, though you told yourself it was just a trick of the light. Chapter 2, The First Sighting. By midday, you'd reached a small clearing where the trail split into 2 paths. One led upward to the summit, the other descended into a shadowed ravine. You stopped to rest, spreading out a map on a flat rock. As you debated which path to take, Jake, the group's self-proclaimed wilderness expert, squinted into the trees. "Did you see that?" he asked, his voice low. "See what?" you replied, following his gaze. The forest was still, the only movement the sway of branches in the breeze. But Jake's face was pale, his eyes fixed on something in the distance. There was someone. A figure, just standing there, between those pines. He pointed to a cluster of trees about 50 yards away. You strained your eyes but saw nothing except shadows and underbrush. Maybe it was a hiker, Sarah suggested, though her tone lacked conviction. You all knew this trail was remote, rarely used except by seasoned backpackers. The nearest ranger station was miles away. Jake shook his head. It didn't move like a hiker. It was too still. Like it was watching us? You laughed it off, trying to lighten the mood, but the unease lingered. You chose the summit path, hoping the open views would shake the creeping dread. As you packed up, you glanced back at the trees Jake had pointed to. For a split second, you thought you saw a flicker of movement, a dark shape slipping behind a trunk. Your heart skipped, but when you blinked, it was gone. Chapter 3, Whispers in the Wind. The climb grew steeper, the trail narrowing as it wound through a dense thicket of evergreens. The air felt heavier now, the sunlight filtering through the canopy in thin, dappled patches. Conversation dwindled, replaced by the sound of labored breathing and the crunch of pine needles. Every so often, you'd catch yourself looking over your shoulder, half expecting to see someone, or something, following. Around mid-afternoon, you stopped at a stream to refill your water bottles. The water was icy, clear as glass, but as you knelt by the bank, you heard it, a low, guttural sound, like a whisper carried on the wind. You froze, looking at your friends. "Did you hear that?" you asked. They nodded, their faces tense. It came again, faint but unmistakable, a wordless murmur that seemed to rise from the forest itself. "It's just the wind," Mark said, but his voice wavered. You wanted to believe him, but the sound wasn't like any wind you'd ever heard. It was too deliberate, too human. You filtered the water quickly, eager to move on, but the whispering followed you, weaving through the trees like a shadow you couldn't outrun. Chapter 4: The Tracks. As evening approached, you found a small campsite nestled in a grove of towering pines. The plan was to spend the night here before pushing to the summit in the morning. You set up tents while Jake built a fire, the crackle of flames a comforting contrast to the eerie quiet of the forest. But as you gathered wood, you noticed something odd in the soft dirt near the campsite: footprints. They weren't yours, nor any of your friends. The tracks were large, uneven, as if made by someone, or something, walking barefoot. They led from the edge of the clearing into the dense forest, disappearing into the shadows. "Guys, come look at this," you called, your voice tight. The group gathered, staring at the prints in silence. Sarah traced one with her finger. "They are fresh," she said. "No way these have been here long." Jake grabbed his flashlight, shining it into the trees where the tracks vanished. The beam caught nothing but branches and darkness. "We're not alone out here," he whispered. You tried to rationalize it, maybe another hiker, a hermit, or even an animal, but the prints were too human, too deliberate. You agreed to keep watch that night, taking shifts by the fire. Chapter 5: The Figure in the Dark. The first shift passed uneventfully, the fire casting flickering shadows on the trees. You took the second shift, sitting with a flashlight and a knife you hoped you wouldn't need. The forest was silent, save for the occasional snap of a twig or rustle of leaves. You told yourself it was just the wind, just animals, but the weight of the darkness pressed against you. Then you saw it. At the edge of the firelight, just beyond the clearing, a figure stood. It was tall, cloaked in shadow, its outline barely distinguishable from the trees. It didn't move, didn't make a sound, but you felt its gaze, heavy and unyielding. Your breath caught, your hand tightening around the knife. You wanted to call out, to wake the others, but your voice felt trapped in your throat. The figure tilted its head, a slow, deliberate motion, and then stepped back, melting into the darkness. You sat frozen, heart pounding, until Mark stirred in his tent, taking over the next shift. You told him what you saw, but when you both searched the clearing, there was nothing, no tracks, no sign, just the endless forest. Chapter 6: The Unseen Pursuit. Morning came, grey and overcast, the air thick with the threat of rain. You packed up quickly, eager to reach the summit and leave the unsettling night behind. But the forest felt different now, its silence oppressive, its shadows deeper. As you hiked, you couldn't shake the feeling of being followed. Every snap of a branch, every rustle of leaves sent your pulse racing. Sarah lagged behind, her face pale. "I saw it last night," she admitted quietly. "During my shift. It was closer than you said, just outside the firelight. It didn't have a face." Her words sent a chill through you. You wanted to dismiss it as exhaustion or fear, but the memory of the figure's silhouette burned in your mind. The trail grew treacherous, the path slick with loose rocks. As you climbed, you noticed more strange markings on the trees, spirals like the one on the boulder, carved into the bark. They seemed to guide you upward, though to what, you couldn't say. The forest was no longer just a place, it was a presence, alive and watching, and the dark figure was its shadow, trailing you through the pines. The shadow of the pines. Section 2, The Encroaching Dread. Chapter 7, The Summit's Secret. The climb to the summit was grueling, the trail steep and littered with jagged stones. The air grew thinner, and the forest's oppressive silence seemed to tighten around you like a noose. When you finally reached the summit, the view was breathtaking, rolling ridges cloaked in mist, stretching to the horizon. But the beauty felt hollow. The spiral carvings you'd seen on the trees were here too, etched into the rocky outcrop at the peak, larger and more intricate, as if marking a sacred place. You dropped your pack, catching your breath, when Mark noticed a small crevice in the rock face. Inside, half buried in dirt, was a rusted metal box. With trembling hands, you pried it open, revealing a tattered journal. Its pages were brittle, filled with frantic handwriting. The entries spoke of a hiker who'd come to these mountains decades ago, describing a shadow that walks, and eyes in the dark. The final entry was a single sentence: "It knows my name." The journal ended abruptly, its last page stained with what looked like dried blood. As you read aloud, a low hum rose from the forest below, vibrating through the ground. The group exchanged uneasy glances. "We need to get out of here," Jake said, his voice barely a whisper. But the path back was the same one you'd come up, through the forest where the figure waited. Chapter 8, The Descent. The descent began under a sky bruised with storm clouds. The wind picked up, howling through the pines, carrying that same guttural whisper you'd heard by the stream. Every step felt like a retreat, yet the forest seemed to close in tighter, the trees leaning inward as if to trap you. The spiral carvings appeared more frequently now, some fresh, as if carved moments before you passed. Halfway down, Sarah stopped dead, her eyes wide. "It's here," she whispered, pointing to a ridge above. You followed her gaze and saw it, the dark figure, motionless, its silhouette stark against the grey sky. It was closer than before, its form unnervingly tall, its edges blurred as if it weren't fully part of this world. You shouted for it to show itself, but the figure only tilted its head, then vanished behind a rocky outcrop. Panic set in. You moved faster, tripping over roots and stones, the trail seeming to twist in ways it hadn't before. The map was useless, landmarks you'd noted on the way up were gone, replaced by unfamiliar clearings and cliffs. It was as if the forest was reshaping itself to keep you lost. Chapter 9, The Lost Path. Night fell faster than it should have, the darkness swallowing the last traces of daylight. Your flashlights flickered, their beams weak against the suffocating gloom. The trail had vanished entirely, leaving you stumbling through underbrush. The whispers were louder now, a chorus of unintelligible voices circling you. Jake clutched the journal, muttering about the hiker's warnings, while Sarah's breathing grew ragged, her eyes darting to every shadow. You found a small hollow to take shelter, huddling together as the temperature plummeted. The fire you tried to build sputtered out, the wood inexplicably damp. Then you heard it, a slow, deliberate crunch of footsteps circling your camp. You shone your flashlight, but the beam caught only trees. The footsteps stopped, and for a moment, silence reigned. Then, from the darkness, a single word hissed through the air: your name. You froze, heart hammering. None of your friends had spoken. The voice was wrong, inhuman, like gravel grinding underfoot. You whispered to the others, asking if they'd heard it. They nodded, their faces ashen. It had spoken each of their names too. Chapter 10, The Offering. Desperate for answers, you flipped through the journal again. A passage near the middle described an offering the hiker had made to appease the shadow, a personal item, left at a spiral-marked tree. "It wants something of ours," Mark said, his voice shaking. "Maybe if we give it something, it'll leave us alone." Reluctantly, you each chose an item: Sarah's locket, Jake's pocket knife, Mark's watch, and your journal sketchbook. You found a tree with a fresh spiral carving, its bark slick with a strange, oily residue. You placed the items at its base, whispering apologies to whatever force ruled this place. As you stepped back, the ground trembled slightly, and the items sank into the earth, swallowed as if by quicksand. For a moment, the whispers stopped. You dared to hope it had worked. But then the figure appeared, closer than ever, standing just beyond the hollow. Its form was clearer now, tall, cloaked in tattered darkness, its face a void that seemed to pull at your soul. It raised a hand, pointing directly at you. Chapter 11, The Chase. You ran, crashing through the forest, branches clawing at your skin. The figure didn't pursue in any human way. It flickered between trees, appearing and vanishing, always just ahead or behind. Your flashlight died, plunging you into darkness broken only by fleeting glimpses of the figure's silhouette. The whispers grew into a deafening roar, words you couldn't understand but felt in your bones. Jake tripped, his ankle twisting with a sickening crack. You tried to help him up, but the figure loomed closer, its presence a weight that made your limbs heavy. "Go!" Jake screamed, shoving you away. You hesitated, but Sarah pulled you forward, tears streaming down her face. You left Jake behind, his cries fading into the night as the figure closed in. Chapter 12, The Hollow Tree. Exhausted and terrified, you and Sarah stumbled into a clearing dominated by an enormous, gnarled tree, its trunk hollowed out like a gaping maw. Another spiral was carved into its bark, larger and more intricate than any you'd seen. The air around it shimmered, as if reality itself was fraying. You felt drawn to it, a compulsion you couldn't explain. Inside the hollow, you found more carvings, spirals within spirals, etched into the wood like a labyrinth. At the center was a small, obsidian stone, pulsing faintly with a sickly green light. Sarah reached for it, but you grabbed her hand, a wave of dread washing over you. "Don't," you whispered. The stone seemed alive, its pulse matching the rhythm of the whispers. Then you heard Jake's voice, faint and distorted, calling from deeper within the hollow. Against your better judgment, you crawled inside, Sarah following. The space was impossibly vast, far larger than the tree's exterior suggested. The walls were slick, the air thick with the stench of decay. Jake's voice grew louder, but it wasn't him, it was the figure, mimicking his cries. Chapter 13, The Mirror of Shadows. The hollow opened into a cavern, its walls covered in more spirals, glowing faintly. At its center stood a pool of black water, still as glass. Your reflections stared back, but they were wrong, your eyes were hollow, your faces twisted into expressions of terror you didn't feel. The figure appeared behind your reflections, its void-like face inches from yours in the water. Sarah screamed, backing away, but the figure stepped out of the pool, its form solidifying. It was no longer just a shadow, it was a presence, towering and tangible, its body woven from darkness and pine needles. It spoke your names again, its voice a chorus of countless others, each one a screen trapped in time. You realized the journal's hiker wasn't alone. Countless others had been claimed by this thing, their voices now part of its own. You grabbed Sarah and ran back toward the hollow's entrance, but the tunnel had changed, twisting into a maze of roots and stone. The figure didn't chase, it was everywhere, its shadow stretching across every surface, its whispers now inside your head. Chapter 14, The Sacrifice. Trapped in the maze, you and Sarah clung to each other, your strength fading. The figure's voice filled your mind, offering a choice. One of you could leave, but the other must stay. It hungered, it said, for a life to bind to the forest, to join the chorus of the lost. You looked at Sarah, her eyes pleading, but the figure's presence was suffocating, its will pressing against your own. You remembered the journal's warning, "It knows my name." It knew you, too, not just your name, but your fears, your guilt, your secrets. It fed on them, growing stronger with every moment you lingered. In a desperate act, you pulled out a lighter and set fire to the roots around you, hoping to drive the figure back. The flames spread, illuminating the maze, but the figure only laughed, its voice rising above the crackle of fire. As the smoke choked your lungs, you realized the truth: the forest wasn't just a place. It was the figure's domain, and you were its prey. The only question was whether you could escape before it claimed you both. Both. The Shadow of the Pines. Section 3, The Light's Legacy. Chapter 17, The Dawn of Clarity. The cave's radiant glow lingered in your minds as you began your descent from the star's heart. The forest, once a labyrinth of dread, now felt alive with a gentle warmth, its pines whispering softly in the breeze. The pendant, though dimmed, rested lightly against your chest, a quiet reminder of your victory. Sarah walked with newfound strength, her ankle no longer troubling her, and Jake's eyes sparkled with a mix of relief and wonder. The mountains seemed to hum with approval, their peaks bathed in the golden light of dawn. Yet, a mystery lingered. The journal, still tucked in your pack, hinted at more secrets, references to keepers of the light, and a cycle of shadows. Who had left the pendant and the carvings? Why had the figure chosen you? These questions hung in the air, unanswered, as you followed the star-etched path back toward the valley. The forest felt safe, but its depths held an enigmatic pull, as if inviting you to uncover more. Chapter 18, The Keeper's Mark. In the Valley of Stars, you paused to rest by the glowing spring. The stone circle was unchanged, its star carvings shimmering faintly. As you sat, you noticed a new mark on the central stone, a small, intricate star within a spiral, etched as if by an unseen hand. Sarah traced it with her finger, her brow furrowed. "This wasn't here before," she said. The pendant warmed slightly, and you felt a strange certainty: someone, or something, was watching, not with malice but with quiet observation. You searched the valley for clues, finding a hidden alcove behind a boulder. Inside was a bundle of cloth, wrapped around a small wooden box. It contained a single item, a silver ring, engraved with the same star spiral symbol. A note tucked inside read, "For the keepers who carry the light." The handwriting matched the journal's, but it was fresh, the ink barely dry. You exchanged glances, the mystery deepening. Who had left this, and how had they known you'd return? Chapter 19, The Path Home. With the ring and journal in hand, you continued downward, the trail now clear and welcoming. The star etchings guided you, appearing on trees and rocks where none had been before, as if the forest itself was lighting your way. The figure's absence was a relief, but its memory lingered, a shadow cast by the unanswered questions. Had it truly been banished, or merely retreated? As you walked, you heard faint music, a melodic hum, like the one from the star's heart, drifting through the trees. It wasn't threatening, but it carried a weight, as if the mountains were sharing a secret they weren't ready to fully reveal. Jake clutched the ring, his expression torn between awe and unease. "There's more to this place," he said. "We stopped it, but I don't think we've seen the whole story." Chapter 20, The Ranger's Tale. At the trailhead, you were greeted by an unexpected sight, a park ranger, her weathered face kind but sharp. She introduced herself as Mara, her eyes lingering on the pendant and ring. "You found something up there," she said, not a question but a statement. Hesitant, you showed her the journal and the items. Her expression softened, and she nodded, as if confirming a long-held suspicion. Mara shared a story passed down through generations of rangers. The mountains, she said, were a battleground between light and shadow, guarded by keepers chosen by the forest itself. The figure was an ancient force, born from human fears and bound by the star's light. "Your keepers now," she said, pointing to the ring. "But the shadow's cycle isn't over. It'll return, in time." She refused to say more, only warning you to keep the pendant and ring safe. As she left, you noticed a star-shaped scar on her wrist, identical to the carvings. Chapter 21, The Village Encounter. You reached a small mountain village to rest before heading home. The locals were warm, offering food and shelter, but their eyes held a knowing glint when they saw the pendant. An old woman, her hands gnarled from years of work, pulled you aside. "You've seen the light," she whispered, her voice trembling with reverence. She spoke of a secret order, the Keepers of the Star, who protected the mountains from the shadow's return. She didn't know their names or where they met, only that they wore star-shaped symbols. She gave you a woven bracelet, its pattern echoing the star spiral. "Wear it," she said. "It'll guide you when the time comes." Her words were cryptic, but her sincerity was undeniable. As you left the village, you felt the weight of a larger purpose, a mystery that stretched beyond your hike. Chapter 22, The Dream of Stars. That night, in a roadside inn, you dreamed of the star's heart. The cave was alive, its crystals pulsing with light, and voices, soft, like the valley's hum, spoke of a greater binding, yet to come. You saw figures cloaked in starlight, their faces hidden, standing in a circle around the pedestal. The figure's shadow lingered at the edge, not gone but waiting, its void-like eyes fixed on you. You woke with a start, the pendant warm against your skin. Sarah and Jake had similar dreams, each describing the same circle of figures. The ring, left on the bedside table, was now etched with a faint glow, as if it had absorbed the cave's light. The shared dream felt like a call, a hint that your role as keepers was far from over. Chapter 23, The Hidden Map. Back home, you pored over the journal, finding a hidden flap in its cover. Inside was a map, drawn in faded ink, marking the Blue Ridge Mountains with star symbols connected by winding lines. One marked the star's heart, but others pointed to distant peaks, valleys, and caves, each labeled with cryptic names: the Watcher's Hollow, the Veil of Dawn, the Silent Crest. A note read, "The light is many, the shadow one." You realized the map was a guide to other sanctuaries, places where the light could be strengthened. The figure's defeat was temporary, part of a cycle Mara had mentioned. The map suggested a network of keepers, scattered across the mountains, each guarding a piece of the light. The mystery grew. Were you meant to find these places, to join this unseen order? Chapter 24. The Keeper's Oath. Inspired by the map, you, Sarah, and Jake made a pact to protect the pendant and ring, to learn more about the Keepers and their purpose. You researched the mountain's history, finding scattered legends of star-worshipping tribes and shadowy entities banished by light. None mentioned the figure directly, but the stories echoed your experience, hikers who vanished, only to return with tales of glowing caves and cryptic symbols. You crafted a small wooden box for the pendant and ring, carving a star spiral into its lid. It felt like a ritual, a silent oath to the mountains. The bracelet from the village never left your wrist, its pattern a constant reminder of the mystery you'd been drawn into. Chapter 25. The Star's Call. Months later, you received an anonymous letter, its envelope marked with a star spiral. Inside was a single sentence: "The light calls you back." No signature, no return address, but the handwriting matched the journals. You felt a thrill of excitement and fear. The mountains were calling, their mystery alive and waiting. You shared the letter with Sarah and Jake, who nodded, their faces resolute. "We're not done," Jake said, holding the ring. Sarah smiled, her eyes bright. "We're keepers now. Let's find out what that means." You plan to return to the mountains, to follow the map's paths and uncover the other sanctuaries. Chapter 26. The New Trail. Your second hike began under a clear sky, the pendant and ring tucked safely in your pack. The forest welcomed you, its air crisp and alive with the hum of the valley. The star etchings were still there, guiding you to a new trail marked on the map. The figure was gone, but its shadow lingered in your thoughts, a reminder that the cycle wasn't over. As you climbed, you found a new carving, a star within a circle, fresh and glowing faintly. It felt like a sign, a confirmation that you were on the right path. The mystery of the keepers, the light, and the shadow stretched before you, vast and uncharted. Chapter 27. The Fellowship of Light. Deep in the mountains, you found another cave, smaller but radiant with star-shaped crystals. Inside, you met a stranger, a woman with a star spiral tattoo on her wrist, her eyes warm but guarded. She called herself a keeper and welcomed you as kin. She spoke of others like her, scattered across the world, guarding places where light held sway over shadow. "The figure is one of many," she said. "But so are we." She gave you a new pendant, its star brighter than the first. The mystery deepened. How many keepers were there? How many shadows? You left the cave with more questions, but also with a sense of belonging, part of something ancient and vast. Chapter 28. The Mountain's Gift. Back in the valley, you found the spring brighter than before, its light now a steady beacon. The locals spoke of fewer disappearances, of a forest that felt healed. You realized your actions had rippled outward, strengthening the light across the mountains. The bracelet on your wrist glowed faintly, as if acknowledging your role. Yet, the journal's final page hinted at a greater mystery. The light is eternal, but the shadow adapts. The figure might return in a new form, in another place. You accepted this, knowing you'd be ready, armed with the pendant, the ring, and the bond you shared with Sarah and Jake. Chapter 29. The Story Shared. You wrote your story, not for fame but to preserve the truth. You shared it with the village, with Mara, and with others who bore the star spiral mark. They listened, adding their own tales of light and shadow. The mystery of the keepers grew, a tapestry of stories woven across generations, each thread a piece of the mountain's secret. You kept the map and journal safe, studying them for clues to other sanctuaries. The mountains had chosen you, but they hadn't revealed all their secrets. The light was yours to carry, but the shadow cycle was a riddle yet to be solved. Chapter 30, The Endless Watch. Years later, you return to the Blue Ridge Mountains, now a tradition with Sarah and Jake. The forest was peaceful, its trails marked with star etchings that guided new hikers to the valley. The figure never reappeared, but you felt its echo in the quiet moments, a reminder to stay vigilant. You stood at the summit, the pendant and ring warm in your hands. The view was unchanged, but you saw it differently now, a place of hope, mystery, and purpose. The mountains whispered, not of fear but of gratitude, their light eternal, their secrets safe with you. Chapter 31, The Legacy Begins. As you left the mountains, you passed a young hiker, her backpack heavy, her eyes bright with adventure. She wore a bracelet like yours, its star spiral catching the sun. She smiled, a knowing glint in her gaze, and you nodded, passing the torch without words. The keeper's legacy would continue, the light carried by those who answered the call. The mystery of the shadow, the light, and the mountains remained, a story unfinished but hopeful. You walked away, the pendant glowing faintly, ready for the next chapter, wherever it might lead.